This is episode 86, Against All Odds, the story of one man's pursuit of the California governorship with Major Williams. Welcome to Alive by Design. My name is Blake Mallon, and we're here to bring you inspiring people, principles, and practices to help you wake up, move toward your meant to, and feel fully alive. Open your mind and let's dive in. Hey guys, before you listen to the podcast, I just wanted to say I really appreciate you being here. If you want to catch these episodes happening live, where you often can ask real-time questions or maybe even get featured on the show, make sure we're connected on Instagram at Blake Mallon and on my Facebook page, facebook.com/BlakeMallon.page, as I'd love to see you there. Love you guys. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay sane, and enjoy the episode. And welcome back to the show. So excited about our guest today. Major Williams is making major waves out here in California, currently running for governor of California. But what I'm most excited about, beyond being a front-running gubernatorial candidate, is the man behind the platform. Major is a successful entrepreneur. He is a marketing specialist. Matter of fact, read a little story we might dive into of he fell into his first business around the age of 13, 14. Can't wait to unpack that. But today is the CEO of the Major Williams brand. He is the founder of a nonprofit organization, Major Kicks for Kids, that is making a huge impact on our next generation youth. We'll dive into some of that. A competitive athlete, a faith-based individual, a family man, father of 3 amazing sons, and beyond all of the accolades, just a truly inspiring story. Raised by a single mother and 3 sisters in Texas, now living with his family here in Pasadena, California. He's had to overcome his own set of obstacles and adversities and challenges to really get to where he is today on a personal mission to restore California and bring back family values, strong business innovation, and sound judgment. So excited to have Major Williams on with us today. Major, how are you, brother?
I'm doing fantastic, especially after an introduction like that.
Hey, it's easy with your story. I'm so excited about our conversation and just truly appreciate the time. I know you and the team are back to back these days. Congratulations on all the effort.
Thank you. I appreciate it. We're working for something monumental, but we know that if we're going to accomplish anything, we have to put in the work. No different entrepreneurship and small business development.
I love it. Well, I'm so excited for today. And obviously we have a mutual friend, Corey, that she's been in my ear for the last couple of weeks. She's like, Blake, you gotta talk to Major. He's such an inspiring individual. He's an entrepreneur. He's mission driven. He's faith-based. He's a family man. He's got these big goals and visions. And he's like, you gotta have him on the podcast. You gotta have him on the podcast. And I gotta give it up. I reached out to your team not only a couple days ago, asked for availability, and here we are. I mean, the response time was phenomenal, even with the hectic schedule. And that just shows the desire and the speed you're on right now. So I just truly appreciate the time you're spending with us today.
Oh, absolutely. And as I said before we got on air, I appreciate you creating this platform to be able to talk to entrepreneurs, because you just never know who life you are affecting with the information of what you're sharing or the stories of other individuals that you brought onto your show also. So for me to kind of follow up on all the other great success that you've had, I'm honored as well to be on here with you today.
We'll have some fun and we'll see where this goes. So, I mean, obviously you're in the running for governor, and we're in a super interesting time for that running here in California. So, I do want to unpack and dive into all of that. But before we go there, I'd love to talk a little bit about, you as the person, Major as the person kind of behind the platform, since I think a lot of, at least my audience and my listeners, this might be the first time they've had the opportunity to hear from you and kind of your story. So maybe just kind of the quick backstory.
Sure. Well, as you mentioned earlier, I am originally from Dallas, Texas, and I always love sharing this story. I came out here over 21 years ago on a visit, and on the 3rd day, I met the most amazing woman ever. And I ended up marrying that amazing woman. So 21 years later with my beautiful wife, Asia, and our 3 sons. But had no aspirations, politically. I've always was very entrepreneur driven. And I became an entrepreneur kind of like default. And I tell people comically, I became an entrepreneur because I went to buy hamburgers. At the end of the day, I was hungry, and that's what kind of drove me to entrepreneurship. And being the only boy in the household, growing up with my mother and my three sisters, I had to do all the big chores, like raking the leaves and mowing the grass, so to speak. And then one day, our neighbor, her name is Miss Pearl, I'll never forget, she called out to me to come over to her yard. She said she would give me $20 to cut her yard. And my mind was blown. I was like, really? You give me $20 to cut your grass? And then, of course, a light bulb went off. And I was like, you know what? Let me go and ask every single neighbor I can and ask them if they'll give me $20. Well, at least 80% said no, but I give you $10. And I was like, yes, let's do it. So that was the beginning of my entrepreneurial spirit and, going off to college, understanding that I had a passion for marketing, presentation, speech, and just speaking to people, because I always loved think tanks and brainstorming and seeing issues and opportunities and so-called complex issues, and seeing the beginning process, the middle process, and then the completion aspect of it just felt really great. So I really gravitated towards marketing, sales, and presentations and things of that nature. But, coming to California, it's the land of dreams. And I was a young, impressionable 23, 24-year-old, and I wanted to do everything. I wanted to act. I wanted to pursue my sports career. I wanted to be a marketing executive. I wanted to be a mogul. And I had that opportunity to kind of exist in all those different industries over the years, over my 21 years here. Fast forward 4.5 years ago, randomly was kind of introduced to the political world by working with a good friend who ran for lieutenant governor of California by the name of Cole Harris. He started very late in the game, but he did monumental work in regards to the votes he was able to galvanize. But for me personally, being a part of a multi-million-dollar campaign, being around some of the best and brightest in politics and policy and legislature, kind of expedited my learning curve. But more importantly, it gave me an opportunity and a window behind the curtains to see how ineffective candidates and also elected officials were for their counties, their cities, and also the entire state of California. So I ran for mayor of Pasadena. I don't know if you know that by my history. I ran for mayor of Pasadena because I realized politics is like any other industry. Once they see talent, especially raw talent, so the common narrative was, you need to run for something. You need to run for something. And I was like, no, I'm just helping my friend out with this campaign. But as I started to see me be able to resonate in that space, doing community outreach for the candidate, I knew that there was an opportunity. So I ran for mayor of Pasadena. It was my first time running as a candidate. Everyone thought I was crazy. Even the people there was like, you're only going to get 100 votes, right? And then we ended up getting close to 4,000 or 5,000 votes. And we made history for a first-time candidate ever to get that amount of votes in a very liberal town, so to speak. But it was just because it wasn't about that. It was about what we can do together and solve these issues. And I think it resonated. Just fast forward, you take that formula on a statewide level, and then you see what we've had in such a short amount of time, which is the fastest rising Republican candidacy in California's most recent history, simply because we relate and we have relatable stories. And I believe in collaborative leadership, meaning that it's not just about my ideals on how we're going to get to where we need to get to. It's about us all pitching in and coming after the stands of frustration and suit up in our uniforms and becoming players versus spectators. And so that's how we've gotten to where we are at this point right now.
I love it. And the way you say it, I know in the amount of time we have, it's so condensed. It sounds like, oh, I went from this to this to this to this to this. And it's just this inspiring story of wow, covering so many different facets. And it sounds just like a tale of ascension, right? A tale of rise, a tale of achievement. And it is. But I also know that probably in between all those bullets, there was a lot of overcoming, a lot of lessons, right? A lot of things that have made you who you are today. I want to kind of backtrack because I'm fascinated about you starting as an entrepreneur. I love that story of like $20 mowing grass is like that light bulb moment. Obviously I've been an entrepreneur, over 20 years now myself. And I think most of the audience that probably will end up listening to this is either on that path or maybe they have part of them contemplating the desire to make that leap and maybe haven't yet. So I don't want to maybe talk about that. Like, was that moment it for you? Like boom, traditional path out the door and it was entrepreneurship from that point forward? Or maybe talk a little bit about your journey as an entrepreneur and maybe the pull and tug from, the traditional path that I'm sure was kind of, forced upon you during that age and maybe the path that you ended up taking. Would love to learn more there.
I did have a very interesting trajectory on how I got to entrepreneurship as far as that mindset. When it happened to me at a very early age, as I said, I stumbled upon it. Back then, no one said the word entrepreneur. So I was, as I said, trying to do something so I could buy hamburgers at the corner store, right? And that was kind of like my addiction, hamburgers, and just to buy food for the household. But I will say that it didn't really click to me about entrepreneurship because I was still traditionally thinking about going to school, getting a job, or whatever my aspirations were, like to play professionally or whatnot. I believe around 18, 19, I started to have those pain points of what it felt like to go into a 9-to-5. I got a job at UPS. I didn't last for 3 weeks. Then I ended up being like a lifeguard. Didn't work out, because for whatever reason, very early on, I wanted to own my time. I wanted that flexibility, but I just didn't know how to actually get there. Not until, in my probably like my mid-20s that I started to kind of discover this is what I wanted to do as far as my mindset. I didn't really want to work for anyone. I wanted to work with people, right? I wanted to collaborate. And so I started doing different things, being in entertainment industry, being a songwriter, being a producer. That gave me ownership, right? Mm-hmm. I was able to, divvy out my services. In acting, I was independent. So I control what my production is because it's about how I perform in those casting calls, right? Or how I perform in that gig, right? So they kept me independent, and I just continued to build on from that particular standpoint. But being in the entertainment industry, I launched a clothing line, which was Lord Major Apparel. That was like one of my first independent entrepreneurship ventures. But I also did it from a drop shipping perspective, which, 12, 13 years ago, a lot of people didn't know about drop shipping. So I essentially was a trailblazer when it came to finding a product, taking that product, creating a website, doing the markup and marketing to my particular audience and making a sale without owning any merchandise or any, no shipping, no overhead, no nothing. And I just remember that and remember now where it's kind of like commonplace for people to operate in that particular space. But it was a tug of war because, entrepreneurship doesn't pay well in the beginning when you're trying to figure yourself out. And as I said earlier, I've been with my wife for 21 years. We've been married 15 years, but we've been together 21 years. And, when you are living with someone, they're like, hey, where's the money? Like, where's the income? So it can be stressful and it can be intense, but it does take, take someone having just that mental fortitude to kind of push through. But more than anything, I always tell people you can pray, but you got to do the work. And that's what it comes down to. And I just continue to fill myself up with mentors that never knew that they were my mentors, meaning that I was online on YouTube every day. I was reading books. I was just trying to gather as much information as I possibly could to get free resources to build my mental business acumen so I could be successful. And it took over 10 years. It wasn't like overnight. It took over 10 years for me to find an actual path or normalcy in a process. And that's the difference. Mm-hmm. Even your audience, the most important thing is to find a process that works for you, and you can copy and paste other people's processes or take it in through a filtering process because we all operate and move differently, so even like you having a page, if someone wants to grow a page like yours and be successful, they can take certain winning elements from you, but they can't duplicate yours verbatim because they may not have your personality, right? Or they may not have this, or they may not have that. So you have to customize your process and then work your process consistently over and over again. And like I said, it's a 10 to 15 year journey. Just even doing that, we've had small little successes and victories, but it's all about mastery when you're trying to do entrepreneurship. A lot of people, they overuse entrepreneurship. I'm an entrepreneur. Well, is it paying for it? Is it paying you? Is it doing you, you're able to survive off your entrepreneurship? That is a true definition of entrepreneurship, but never to discredit the ones that are just starting, because that was me as well. But I do that to give you that push and that jab and say, come on, let's find that process now. Because now so many people are part of this industry, you can expedite your learning curve, honestly, but just by looking at the success and the tactics what everyone else doing. And before I finish, one of the key things that helped my process, I stumbled upon this, right? And when I share it with people, it blows their mind. If you ever want to learn anything in an expedited rate, as far as a company, product, business, fashion, or whatever, all you have to do is, one of the things that you should do is sign up to their newsletter. Because if you have a product or a service or your brand, if you want to learn how to market yourself, sign up to anybody's newsletter, because they're going to show you a winning formula within their newsletter. Every time they send you something, you have to understand they're paying thousands and thousands of dollars for the best people to help them craft that one email, right? And so you copy and paste that one email and put your own inflections in it, your own information, but that's a winning formula. That's a template for your success. And when I tell people that, because they get newsletters just for the sake of the newsletter, I look at it as the structure and the process, messaging that they use in every single line. And I know that they've paid a professional that is probably above all of our pay grades who put this together for them. And so we can copy and paste that little jewel and use it ourselves to start gaining whatever success or result that we're looking for from that.
I love that tip. And I think everybody listening, no matter what your business is or your desire category, we can all learn from modeling. And Major, to your point, like we live in an age where we have access to everyone, everywhere, at a click of a button. Like you can compress time so much today that we couldn't do 10 years ago or 20 years ago if you have the intention, like you said. But I love the way you said, like, it models of success out there. I relate a lot to your story. I'm sitting here doing the math. So my wife and I, we were high school sweethearts. We just celebrated our 22, married for 8. So similar. I was a lifeguard for a little while, and 19 years old when I was like this 9 to 5. I had to make that shift. I'm curious, when you were in the earlier years, not the years of success and building the brands and you started to build momentum, but like when you were first making that shift, for me, I knew I went through a lot of resistance. Like my mom was a teacher, my dad, a career, lifelong law enforcement. So that I call it the script. You mentioned the go to school, go to college. I call it the script. I had a TED talk on the topic of this script prescription we're all following that went quasi-viral. And you kind of mentioned pieces of it. I'm curious for you, when you were in that transition or shift phase, did you feel a lot of pressure or resistance in going kind of outside the traditional path, the 9 to 5 path, the career path, to kind of begin this leap as an entrepreneur? And what'd you do about it?
I did. I felt pressure and also resistance. My mother's in Dallas, Texas, and she's in the Southern culture, it's like, baby, you better go get a job, right? That's what my mom used to say when I called her. And she didn't understand, the roller coaster that I put myself through, striving to be this entrepreneur or a small business owner or creating an actual brand. But, there were times where, I took jobs. I tried it. I had the resistance, the pressure was on my neck, and I had to pay my cell bill and light bill or whatever. And I went out and got jobs, but I never truly lasted. But I will tell you that every job that I've had, and I give you an example. I worked for DirecTV back in before my first son was born. This is over 10 years ago, and I was there at least 8 months because I hit like a rough patch and just trying to be safe, preparing for my next son to come. I just wanted to get something like a steady Eddie, right? I got afraid. I said, let me just go and get a job. So I worked at DirecTV for a short amount of time, but the difference then versus years before that, I actually went there and I took their formula, no different than the newsletter I told you about, right? Mm-hmm. So going through the DirecTV training, I think anyone should probably do, because they are so on point with the amount of detail and data and money they spent on professionals creating this training session that they have. Now, if you are a marketer, you want to be a brander, you want to be in sales and presentations, DirecTV, their program is one of the best. So the 4 or 5 weeks that I went through training with them, I felt like I could go and start my own direct TV. Like, that's how amazing it is. If you go into it with that open mindset to like really take the jewels and not look at it as training or as a test. I went in and said, let me see what that blueprint is, right? And so after 9 months, my entire life changed after 9 months. Just being on the phone, learning different inflections, learning how to come full service, and also using what they gave me as ammunition to close them, right? And so all that came from that particular process. But I did have those pressure points, and that I felt that tension, like, should I or shouldn't I? But once I did do it, I would tell everyone, life is it's a path of opportunities if you see it as such. Most times people see the path as like, this is going to be a rough path. But when I see a rough path, I look at it as an opportunity, because whether it be the celebration and the victory after we get through this rough path or this patch is going to be amazing. Now we are the blueprint for other people to actually not have as much fear about going down those particular paths.
I love that. And I think all of us listening can relate, because I think everybody that does make the decision to go a entrepreneur route, by definition, an untraditional route, like we fight I call it the supposed to. We fight the supposed to, because it's not what we're supposed to do, right? It's not what mama, like you said we're supposed to do. And we go through that tension, that friction, that shift to get to the other side. And a lot of people never make it because of that tension. And I'll give you a question. I'm curious your perspective on this, because a lot of it has to do with the way we're brought up in the educational system, right? The school system still today. And I remember my aha moment, which was a long time ago now. Like, I'm getting old, but I was 19, where I realized, man, like, the system we were being brought up in was designed for a time that no longer exists. Yeah. And I remember thinking this like 20 years ago, right? And I look back, and I'll be real transparent with you, Major. Like, I have young kids too. My son is 5. My daughter's almost 3. I know you have 3 boys. And so I'm just beginning now watching. He's going to be going into kindergarten here this next school season. And like, I'm scared, because I don't think the system has changed that much from when, like, I went through this 20 years ago. And are we still preparing our next generation, our youth, for a time that no longer is? And I have to throw this your way, because you may find yourself in a position like very soon where you can really make change, right? Where you can make a difference with your career and your ascension and where you're going. I'm just curious if you have any thoughts on school and the system, and is there a solution, or where should it go, or is it changing? I wouldn't feel good about myself if I didn't plant the seed and ask you that question, because I'm concerned as a father, and I'm concerned as a leader for our future generation. What are your thoughts on it?
Absolutely. I think education is a huge opportunity once more. When you say that, you ask the question, has it changed? Yes, it has changed, but it hasn't necessarily changed for the good of our students, because it isn't mirroring the times that we're in right now. Before I go deeper, I always share with people, it's like, there are 18-year-olds that are probably way more richer or successful than all of us, right? Because they tapped into something that's expedited their success. And so that paradigm is different. So me as a leader, whether it be as an ex-governor or as someone who just runs my nonprofit or whatever, I am always going to be an advocate for empowering the next generation with the tools necessary to help them, go towards their ambitions, go towards their aspirations, because I think it's necessary. So when it comes to the school, you have to have leadership in place that has the intent, that wants to empower the students and also show them the pathway. Oftentimes we have people in leadership positions, they tell you everything that they need versus actually showing you what uniquely makes me different as a candidate or as a leader is that not only do I have the ability to tell you ideals that have been cultivated from task force and other people who possibly agree, but I can also show you, through data, through statistics, and also through story. Right. And just look at the landscape of where we are right now. Like, we have to start talking about, like, I have 3 sons. My oldest is 10. I have a 5-year-old and I have a 2-year-old. My oldest, that's 10 years old. He already has an investment portfolio. He's been reading about investments for the last 2 years. And in 2 years' time, his mind is probably further than mine was when I was 30 years old.
Wow.
And that's the difference. And he has an actual portfolio. And so his conversation is different amongst even his friends. And I always tell this story about my wife told me she had one of the windows open at her house, and him and a couple of his buddies were playing outside. And she randomly heard them talking about, did you check your Robinhood app today? Mm-hmm. They're 10. And they're talking about their Robinhood app because my son has got the other parents to get their other kids to start investing $5, $10 in different stocks. And, like, that's just like, that never happened in my childhood. And so as a leader, I will push for expanding the empowerment role of our kids, different types of lessons, money management, how important credit truly is, how to leverage credit, and also reintroduce trade, working with your hands, right? That protects a lot of kids. I, in high school, taught myself how to cut hair. The reason why I did that, because when I went to college, I knew I wouldn't have any money. My mom didn't have money to send me. So I was able to cut hair every Friday. It was a line at my dorm room door. I cut hair for like $5, a head back then. I'm telling my age right now, so we didn't charge much for haircuts back then. But that's how, I was able to survive. And so I think from a leadership perspective, we need to teach empowerment beyond just the social norms or the traditional norms. And also be someone who's proactively pushing it's okay to go to trade school as well, because those guys are making 6 figures a year and living a really great lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I mean, that gives me hope that it's possible. And I think you're right. Like, everything rises and falls on leadership, and I guess leadership with the right intention for change. And I know at some point it's going to have to. You can tell when you speak, you can tell you have a real passion for youth, and obviously you and your family have the nonprofit Major Kicks for Kids. I'm curious, like, where does this passion for the next generation come from?
So I think it comes indirectly from. First of all, it comes from appreciation. I grew up in the projects. I didn't grow up with much, and there are key individuals, and I call these individuals angels. And one of them is Roderick Howard, Darwin Brown, and Lo Andrews. These are all 3 individual men, because I grew up without a father. These are 3 men that were in my life, and also Charles Haywood, that poured into my life at certain points throughout my life as a kid. That allowed me to thrive and to see beyond my circumstances. And I think that's important. But it really started from a place where I wish someone would have done it for me, right? So the nonprofit, I've been doing it 15 years indirectly without it being an actual foundation. And someone on Instagram in 2010, a buddy of mine, I was always giving away tennis shoes. And I put it on Instagram of me just giving away tennis shoes because I had so many of them. And I just giving away gently worn or brand new shoes. And the guy was like, you should create something around that. And then years later, I ended up creating Major Kicks for Kids, which the premise of it is to, we give away over 1,000 pair of shoes every single year, in addition to haircuts. But the true gem of it is, being around these individuals and these kids when they have that moment of, appreciation. And then as the adult or mentor, you get an opportunity to ask them, so what is it that you want to do with yourself? Mm-hmm. So why haven't you done it yet? And just kind of be that mentor for them, to be that bridge, because that's what those individuals were for me, early on in my childhood. And so I kind of want to be that for them. And also the other people that I have around me working with my nonprofit, including my wife and my family, so we can just try to add value. And I think that if people see good, people producing good in certain ways, hopefully they want to replicate that as well too. And so we just want to be a lightning rod in the nonprofit sector, the adding value sector, and also politically as well, letting people know that they can exist in the space also, not being a career politician, not being slimy, not trying to, do people wrong. And you can actually like people, and you can exist and do well in this industry also.
Oh, Major, you literally gave me chills when you were just saying that. And I know when people hear you speak, they're going to realize it's genuine. Like, people's BS meters today, right, are very dialed in. So when someone's sharing from the heart, like you can feel that, and you can feel that from you. And, I applaud you on the work that you are doing. And I think it's brilliant. So my marketing mind gets turned on. I'm like, they're using the kicks as the key, right, to create gratitude, lower the guard, and then get these people on a trajectory, right, toward they're meant to, right, to where they want to go. I'm like, that's brilliant, because if you go at them with just the hard stuff, they're not going to let you in. I think it's brilliant.
And one of the main reasons why that was like a trigger for me to use is because I remember how I felt when I had a new haircut, a new pair of tennis shoes. I thought I could do anything, right? And so I just remembered that feeling that I had as a young, impressionable kid. And so I just wanted to implement that into what we were doing with the nonprofit as well, to kind of be like that gateway, the entryway.
It's the key. I think it's brilliant. And now that I understand that, it's like, wow, like the mission's even so much bigger, because you hear kicks for kids. I mean, shoes are important. But I remember how important shoes. I remember getting my first pair of Bo Jacksons, right? I remember what happened when I asked my mom for the pumps, when the pumps first came out and everybody was getting the pump shoes. And she ended up buying me the LA Gear versions and not the Reebok versions, and how let down I was that I had the LA Gear versions and not the Reebok versions. Like kicks are the key at that age. But I love that's the key to then really helping and guiding them to where they want to be as our next generation of youth. I think it's awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So for those of you guys that maybe get inspired by that conversation, easy to find, majorkicksforkids.com. Obviously, you can help with the kicks, the shoes, and the donation, but obviously knowing there's a bigger mission at play there for the kids in the lower income areas that really could use and benefit from the sport. So if you feel inspired like I am right now, guys, check it out, majorkicksforkids.com. Great organization. And I love the passion for youth, because they are the key. Let's jump to the topic at hand. We're in a mess here in California. So explain what's going on for the listeners that maybe are not fully informed on this recall and what it means and where it's at and what happens next. And for the listeners maybe outside of California, this isn't on the radar. Can you just give us the quick update on what's going on with this recall?
Absolutely. So there was an amazing effort put together by some amazing organizers of the recall effort, and also thousands of volunteers over close to a year ago. And it's basically stemmed even before the pandemic happened. California is just dealing with so much. There's a laundry list of issues. We have homelessness rising. We have crime rising. We have infrastructure issues. We have mismanagement of funding that's going on. We have an exodus of families, leaving California. We have an exodus of small businesses either leaving or closing down due to the misguided decisions and policies and mandates of Governor Gavin Newsom. And we also have an exodus of corporations leaving California as well, too. And so when you say corporations leaving, you're also saying jobs are being lost. Families' lives are being changed, and not for the good. And so I began this journey understanding that there was frustration with the governor over 13, 14 months ago. And I was the first candidate to actually register to run for this 2022 election. But now that the recall signatures have been verified, now we're in a place now where there's going to be a special election in end of October, early November. And the way that it works is basically you have to get over 1.4 or 1.5 million signatures, which we were able to do here in California. And then the lieutenant governor sets the date for the actual recall. And all the candidates have to lobby, for the support of the voters. And as I said, I was the first candidate in the race. But now there's a laundry list of candidates. It's probably like 26, 27. The last recall is over 100 candidates.
Oh, wow.
But it's nothing to be alarmed about. This is just what people do to be a part of the fray, part of the circus or whatnot. The ones that are going to really have an opportunity are the ones with better name ID and who has the most money, who resonates, or who has the best messaging, whatever. And I believe over the last year, we have resonated through the hearts and minds of people across the entire state, because we have done something different that you would feel, but you would think that is, traditional, which is hit the ground. With the actual people, and not let it be just about a yard sign, a billboard, or a campaign commercial. I think while we've been able to galvanize so much in such a short amount of time is that we have dedicated ourselves and made many sacrifices being away from our family. being out there on the road, having those conversations, having those tough conversations, hearing the plights of parents telling me that their kids are suffering due to anxiety and stress, and suicide rate is going up. And I believe, even amongst the time, and I share this with you, there was a time where I was going so hard because when I'm committed and devoted to something, I'm going to give it my all. I have the enthusiasm and just the energy to go and do it. But there was a time where I felt like I was on the edge of burning out. Doing so much, trying to be everywhere, everything for everyone. And I came across this mother, and she shared something with me about her son. He was a junior in high school. He was hurt his junior year playing football. He was a really good player. And he was looking forward to his senior year. And due to the lockdowns and the mandates and restrictions, he wasn't able to play his senior year in order to get that scholarship that he dreamed of. And all of his other buddies and friends, they played their junior year. So they had footage and tape. So they were all getting recruited. And so one of the gifts and curses of social media, of course, everyone is putting up videos of their acceptance letters or their victory speeches and things of that nature. And this young kid was seeing all this and just went into a spiral of depression, anxiety, and ended up killing himself. And he ended up killing himself. And I seen the pictures and I seen the videos of the kid. And he had just like this glow to him, and just this bright light that I just seen coming from his smile and his enthusiasm, his energy, and being a father that hurts, and she did everything she could, I know that we were going through certain things in a leadership perspective. You have to protect the people, whatever, but we know for a fact, due to the data, whatever, it was over politicized. At the risk of our kids, at the risk of their psychology. And so, excuse me, I get a little emotional when it comes to that, man, because that was the moment where I knew that I could do all things for the sake of him, That's just one of so many stories that exist out there. And that's why I just refuse to give up. I'm in a place right now where I'm catching bows and arrows all over the place because ask for permission to exist in this political space. I've been transparent from the beginning, and I'm hoping that what I represent is going to be an inspiration and enlightening rod to entrepreneurs, to individuals in their communities to say, hey, we are eligible, we are qualified to do whatever it is that we put in the work to accomplish. And that's what we represent. And so I know I went off on a tangent right then or whatever, but California isn't missing the smartest individual to be the next governor. It isn't missing the guy who has a track record of being the richest in business. California is simply missing relatable leadership that has empathy, that has the ability to collaborate not only with the special interests and professionals and corporate entities, but also with people. California is missing relatable leadership that actually likes people, and tells it straight how it is. We may not agree on every single issue every single time, but when does that happen in life on your normal day-to-day basis anyway, right? So we're missing these type of personal conversations and interactions versus looking for these traditional boxes and robot. You should do this. You should act this way. This is how you should. This is why I run my social media and have grammatical errors every now and then. I want to give people that alternative. And so if people want the real, for the first time in California's history, you have that opportunity. And so it's just my job and duty to make sure I get out there and resonate and make sure that they understand this opportunity that we all have.
Well, first and foremost, I acknowledge you for being willing to be so open and vulnerable and share the stories that move you. Because I think at the end of the day, that's what people want. They don't want the rehearsed speech that's been said 222 times. They just want to know what's real today. And people can feel that. So I acknowledge and I appreciate you for that. And to kind of actually go back, it's not unlike what we were talking about earlier. It's we fight this supposed to all our life, right? All of us fight this supposed to all our life. We talked about it in the context of becoming an entrepreneur. And obviously you fought that. I fought that. Many of our listeners fought that. But you're in the fight of it again, because on paper, you're not supposed to be a politician. So I don't think, if you look, supposed to politician is not your resume right now. And it looks like what I'm hearing is you kind of have pride in the fact that your background is not the quote unquote supposed to be a politician. And you kind of see that as not only an advantage is maybe what's needed. Am I understanding that correctly?
Oh, absolutely. But also it's just redefining your perspective on what politics is. And I tell people all the time, I said, we deal in politics every single day. They've only once more traditionalized a word and made it privy to an actual industry. Politics exists in all platforms, in everyday relationships, networking, in business, etc. Right? They're just trying to itemize it, and that's how they keep us afraid or keep us away from working to obtain those particular offices. And I do always say this. I say that if there was an electrician that was running for governor of California, I would vote for the electrician without a doubt, because at least an electrician deals in completion. They have a culture within them to complete the job or the task. They can't get the check or the yes or the approval unless what? The job is done. And politicians, especially career politicians, do not exist in that realm. They can't solve their problems because they're not like entrepreneurs and small business owners. They lack imagination, right? We have to figure out how to keep the lights on every single month, or to pay our staff, or to pay those outstanding invoices, right? But when you have these guys, and it's not going to be scholarly or academic, but when that's just your function to build academic, have the master's degrees, and go into this particular lane, where you're missing so much of what truly is missing, what's truly needed on how to solve those complex issues. And then we all wonder why at the next cycle we're still talking about the same or very similar issues that are complex, so to speak, every single time. So I just want to be a representation of someone that's coming in with an alternative. I'm creating task force that not only include the professionals, but the real people who have the experience, boots on the ground in those actual industries. So when we talk about homelessness, when we're talking about farming and agriculture, when you're talking about police reform, when you're talking about training, I'm bringing everyone to the table so we can expedite the process of doing the most good under my administration.
I love it. And you mentioned a couple times just through our conversation here, that word leadership keeps kind of resurfacing. And I guess at the end of the day, that's what governor is, right? Or I guess should be, right? I mean, it's leadership of everyone here in California, leadership over the state, someone that can be a change maker. I mean, that's the seat, that's the role. I'm just curious. We've used that word. Like, how would you define leadership?
For me, it's someone that can inspire and galvanize other peoples for the common good. At the end of the day, like, leadership has to be a likable individual, someone who can be receptive and open to collaboration, but also someone who can be strong in moments where strength is required. Because as I said earlier, sometimes we may not agree 100% on every single thing, and I'm going to stand on what the consensus is at that particular moment. And some may not agree, but I'm okay with that. But as I just did right now, I let people know that's how I operate, versus hiding my cards and say, no, I agree with you. Oh, I would always agree with you. We would never we would never have any disagreements. I don't exist in that space. I believe in just being fair through conversation. And that's something that I got from my mother's, not my mother's, but my wife's father-in-law. I'm sorry, her stepdad. His name was Alan Lott, and he was always very loud, vocal, and a straight shooter. And he always used to tell me, he'd say, "You won't get anywhere if you don't share your truth up front. The truth up front, how you feel, but always be receptive till you can learn something, even during that process. So even though if I feel like we can do it this way, I'm still open to those conversations and not closed-minded when it comes to that."
Yeah. I mean, I love that. I think we can all relate. And, what I'm also hearing just in your answers is it's closing the gap of kind of what we say and who we are. Right. And so often in politics, and maybe I'm globalizing or overgeneralizing, but maybe the feeling for some of the audience and community out there is like just the gap keeps getting wider from what people say and what people do. Right. And at the end of the day, leadership, it's the example that we set, not just when we're on camera, right? Or giving a speech, but every single day. And that's what I'm hearing kind of coming from you as well. And obviously an example you try to do it from your family and your nonprofit in the business world. You mentioned taking arrows and I guess that's just part of it, right? So again, the entrepreneurial journey, you achieve some level, you get the haters, right? You get people always throwing stones. And, I guess when you leap into politics, it gets even worse. It's like the nature of the game. Like what's your take on how you keep thick skin, with the haters, the comments? You obviously have a battle up here. We're in a liberal state, and you're coming in with not the supposed to resume. Like, what's your philosophy on the inevitable haters you're going to face?
Well, my philosophy is that, just be prepared and know that at some point it's going to come, because anyone can take anything and put a headline over it and call it what it is. Although we all know that may not be what the case is, right? And so you just have to have a strong mental fortitude. You have to be rooted in your faith, which is what I am, very close to prayer, my spiritual advisor, consulting with my wife and the people that are closest to me during this particular time. And one of the main things is not to try to deal with it all on your own. So I have certain decompressing things that I do to keep my sanity in this, because you can be torn, because if you truly are genuine and have all the best intentions, but you're still not perfect, right? And then you get judged upon that not being perfect, but you're being judged upon other people who are not perfect themselves. So psychologically, that could mess with you, because you want to lash back out at those people also and put the mirror up to them as well. Because my biggest thing in all of this is, like, I talk about the stands of frustration. Yes, we are united in frustration across this entire state, but there are still a lot of people in the stands of frustration saying what everyone else should be doing, or if they were in the game, they would do it like this. We've all seen those individuals. I used to be one of those people myself. But until you take yourself out of the stands of frustration and jump on the playing field and become a player versus a spectator, then that's when you're truly adding value to your situation, and in this case, to our state. If you care about education, if you care about forest management, if you care about crime, you have to take yourself out of the stands of frustration. And so I get that. And so I just choose to be a player. I use the analogy oftentimes is that, I can't be a boxer in a boxing ring. And as soon as I get hit, look at my corner and be like, he just hit me in the face. Well, a boxing fight, right? It's a part of it, right? And so I use those analogies to kind of just like keep me grounded and just keep me centered when it comes to some of the attacks that we get every single day. It's always something, if it's not, how in the heck is he going to be the next governor? If he's used to be a rapper and he used to use derogatory words and whatnot. But then you're not respecting the process of other people who are going to thrive and grow as well. I'm 44 years old. Of course, I'm not doing the exact same thing I was doing at 30 or even at 20. So, you deal with these false narratives and it just kind of is mind-blowing sometimes, but you're just hoping people are just a lot smarter and they get it in regards to how people are so intentional about what you are qualified for versus upon what they're projecting upon you and not truly knowing you.
On a personal level, though, does it sometimes get hard not to take that type of stuff personally?
Oh, 100%, because I am all about being petty right back. I have that in my DNA, right? I grew up around a lot of comedians and so we always like to shoot our shots back when people say little slick stuff or whatever. But also just from being who I am as a man, like I just believe in respect. And sometimes people cross the line and act as if we're not adults. And this is not like, disrespecting and talking to people any way that you want to. I'm all for freedom of speech or whatever, but disrespect when you hear it and when you see it. But like I said, the beautiful part about it is, for the most part, it's always online. It's never in person. It's always like pleasantries, or they don't even say anything at all, which is good for the both of us. Like, let's exist and do the good that I'm trying to do.
Yeah, it's the truth. No matter what path everybody's on, right? You get to a certain level, you're gonna have people that disagree. But how come the haters always like hide behind screen names? It's always like in text, right? It's the truth out there. It's the world we're in. I guess the real question I have for you, kind of bottom line, Major, and I appreciate getting a chance to know you as the person beyond a lot of the things you stand for. But you're a successful entrepreneur. You got successful brands, successful companies. Obviously, you're a very innovative thinker, creative marketing mind. You could do a million things, right? Right now, you're sacrificing your time away from family. You told me like you're booked, right? Every half hour, hour by hour. I mean, you're grinding right now. You're in the middle of a crazy time with this, recall coming up. The real question is why? Like, why? I mean, why make this leap when you don't have to? Why are you running?
Well, I've shared two different stories when it comes to the actual why. I didn't want to run for governor of California very early on because I had just lost my mayoral race in Pasadena. And so, having a competitive sports background, I'm like, man, I just lost. I don't want to be like the guy running again, or the notion is, Major's running again. I didn't want to be that guy. And so I became the president of the New California Governor Committee, which was just a group that we created to go and find and support the next Republican candidate for governor of California. That was a mission. That was a goal. We ended up talking to at least 10 to 11 different potential candidates. And literally, I guess 9 out of the 10 or 11 conversations, after I would finish giving my presentation on what they can do and what needs to be done, they would look at me and say, Major, you should just do it. You should just run. Everything you just said right now, I can't say it the way that you just said it, or make it resonate the way that you just said it. And they would just kept saying, you should just do it. So I rejected that. I was just like, no, I want to stay politically active, but I just want to support who's going to be running. It only changed. It only changed when I had a dream at 4:30 in the morning, and my grandfather, his name is L.J. Dean. He is, to me, growing up, he was Superman, he was Black Panther, he was Captain America, he was Incredible Hulk. He was every superhero all in one to me growing up. And my grandfather wasn't a man of many words, but I knew he loved me to death. And when he spoke, he would vibrate the entire room. He had a very deep voice. And on this particular night, around 4:30 in the morning, he came to me and he said 2 words. And those 2 words were, step up. 2 words. I woke up, the hair was standing up on my arms. I was in a cold sweat, and I immediately, reached over to my wife and woke her up. She wasn't happy. It was 4:30 in the morning. But I told her what had transpired. And she grabbed my hands immediately, and she probably prayed for me for like 2 minutes. And after that 2 minutes, I opened my eyes and I literally saw myself, had a vision of being sworn in as the next governor of California.
Wow.
From that day, 290 something days ago, I have been on the run to make that happen and to make that manifest.
I love it. Step up. And you're doing it every single day, leading by example for sure. I want to be mindful of our time. And before we get to kind of some closing thoughts, I want to do a quick lightning round if you're up for it. This will be super quick. So I asked these 3 questions to everybody I've had on the podcast. They don't necessarily have to do with you running for governor or political platform, but I'm just curious what your response would be and how you think about this. So I mentioned earlier, I did a TED talk that ended up going quasi-viral. It's like over 1 million views right there. And the concept is around shifting a script. And the script being an analogy for kind of like the stories we often tell ourselves. And I'm curious for you and your journey, your trajectory, right? At any point in the parts we've talked about today, or maybe the stuff we didn't get a chance to learn, I'm curious, like, what was the most important script you shifted? Like, you went from thinking or telling yourself one thing to thinking and telling yourself another thing that has made the biggest difference to who Major is today? I'm curious.
I think the realization of understanding that I wasn't a victim and that it was no one else's fault while I was in the predicaments that I was in very early on. It was my fault. So accountability, the script of understanding the accountability and that I wasn't a victim.
I love that. I love that. So many of us, especially coming off a tough year, right, with pandemic and so forth, we got to get out of that, what could be labeled victim mentality, into that responsibility mentality. Step up, right? I love that. So let's say you go past governor. Okay, you go past governor to like, you are God for a day, and you have the power to like snap your finger and give everybody on planet Earth an instant script shift, an instant belief shift. Like, boom, you could give that gift of giving everybody that thought, that belief in their mind instantly. What would you give them?
I think I would have to pull something I've heard Gary Vaynerchuk say. It would be empathy. I think at the snap of a finger, if you give people empathy, there's a ripple effect in their actions and also their mindset, and it covers so much than people that have no idea. If you have empathy.
I love that. And I love that we have our front-running gubernatorial candidate citing Gary V on the podcast. I love this. Last one. So the name of the podcast is Alive by Design. I've always had this affinity for the energy around the word alive, not just being alive, but like feeling truly alive. I'm curious for you as an individual, what makes Major Williams feel most alive?
Looking at my sons every single day, looking at my sons grow and just ask inquisitive questions, and just to feel like, although I am the parent, to feel like I'm responsible for some humans, and we're like friends and we have a very close bond. Like that makes me feel so alive, because, growing up in this, in the world in itself, sometimes you can feel like you are alone, but we have family in this family that's a loving family. It feels so great. So that makes me feel alive. Interacting with my family, my wife, that always does it for me.
I love it. I think every parent on here just put a smile on their face for sure. So before I let you share anything else on your mind for some closing thoughts, just kind of quick plugs. So for everybody listening, thank you for the time. Major Williams, very easy to find online, majorforgovernor.com. Great website, tells you a little more about Major, but what he stands for, the platform, what he's looking to do to create change. So definitely check out majorforgovernor.com. We obviously talked about the nonprofit earlier, easy to remember, majorkicksforkids.com. If you want to give back, you feel compelled to donate, some time, some energy, some money to make a difference. Using the kicks as the key to get people on an upward trajectory for our next generation. I love the mission there. And, give them a shout on Instagram. Again, just at Major Williams on Instagram, at Major Williams on Instagram and other social media platforms. So definitely easy to find and resources out there to learn more. So, Major, I appreciate so much. I know we danced around a bunch of different topics, probably not your traditional, governor candidate interview here. But I think, everybody listening got a chance to hear a little bit about who you are as a person, what makes you think, what makes you tick, and what has led you to making the decisions and the strides, and the journey you're on right now. Any closing thoughts, anything you want to leave us with before we round out?
Well, I tell everyone it is time to think major about the future of California. And this is an opportunity for us all to grow, and we can be inspired by each other by having someone in office that believes in a collaborative way of doing things, collaborative leadership. And also, if you want to support the campaign, please go to the campaign and become an ambassador. Minimum $5 a month goes a long way if we all bond together. So go become an ambassador, get informed. And we also have an opportunity on the website where you can leave a video message if you want to join a task force. Let us know what we can do better. Be a resource and an ally, and we greatly appreciate that.
Well, Major, you have been so generous with your time today, and more than that, really letting us know who you are, what you stand for, and the vision you have. Your story is already inspiring, and I have a feeling that we're only at the beginning of it, of where you're going to go, what you're going to do, and the change you're going to be able to make. So just thank you so much for the time today. And everybody listening, guys, hey, we do this to make a difference. If you got something from today's conversation, reach out to Major, shoot him a message, let him know what resonated. Let us know this is making a difference, right? The only reason we're here is to do something with our time that contributes to you in some way. And hopefully today's conversation, whether you're an entrepreneur, an aspiring entrepreneur, someone that fell on this because you want to learn more about Major, hopefully something today resonated with you, added value to your life. And we appreciate all of our time together. Major, good luck, and appreciate your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I appreciate you, brother.
Hey guys, one last thing. I'm super excited that this new podcast, Alive by Design, just went live. You see, I designed the show to bring you inspired thoughts and fascinating conversations with the world's most impactful people, to provide transformative principles and practices to help you wake up, move toward your meant to, and feel fully alive. And I'd love for you to help me spread the word now. Simply subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on this platform right now. So if I've ever given you value, please do me this personal favor and go subscribe now. And if you found today's episode helpful in any way, make sure you share this with at least one friend today. You have the power right now to change someone's day. So send them a text message with a link to alivebydesign.com, or simply copy and paste the link right from this podcast platform. Who's one person you know right now that you want to see succeed, that you want to see grow, that you want to see feel more alive? Shoot them a text with your largest takeaway from today and be a light in their day. And if you were referred here by a friend, make sure you shoot them a text back and say thank you. I'd love to hear from you directly on what you got from today's podcast. So if you're up for it, drop by my Instagram @BlakeMallon and shoot me a DM. And as always, thank you for showing up. I'm grateful for you, and I hope our time together today in some small way helped you feel a little more alive. Until next time.